the wife and I have been able to address issues we thought we would never be able to have, and they are transformed.
I had this couple come into me one day. They had an emergency, so it was my lunch hour. Her name was Ann, and she was quite articulate. You know, it's life and death. I need to talk with you right now. I'm going to bring my husband in. Now, I'm a relationship therapist, right? We do marriage and family therapy and all that kind of thing. And I found out that relationships are far more complex than anybody realizes. But everything in the universe is in relationship to everything else. This is like a matrix of consciousness, and each part builds on the other. So when you use the implicate order and Townsend's multiple dimensions, you begin to see that there's way more to relationships than you'd ever dream. So they came into the office. And the first thing, he was a great big guy. He had to duck under the door to get in. Huge guy, just shoulders twice as wide as mine. Just huge guy. And trim, you could tell he's a hardworking guy. And she, a little gal, 5 foot high, just thin as, just amazing couple. And the first thing he says is, you do it or we're done. He sits down, doesn't say hello or anything. Just, you do it or we're done, that's it. And she says, well, the life of the baby's at stake here. And I thought, Dr. Woolf, maybe you could help us with something here, because we don't know what to do, because I want to have the baby and he doesn't. And I looked at him and said, okay, what part of you doesn't want the baby? He says, look, I am not going to be trapped by some woman who just gets pregnant. I refuse. I said, when did you first feel that way? And he kind of like went, ah. And his color went a little pale. So I never thought of that. He says, I was 16 in high school and was lead football player. And this gal, everybody had talked about doing her. And so she offered to be done. And I thought, well, I have to learn how somehow. And so I did her. And I mean, you mean you had sex with her? Yeah, I had sex with her. And she came back to me 5 weeks later and said she was pregnant. And I didn't know what to do about it. And it got so nasty, I quit school and went to work in the steel mill, and that was it. And I determined I would never have anything more to do with her at all, or with anything like that. And now I'm with this woman, Ann, and she's pregnant, and I know it's a trap. So, when you understand that there are multiple dimensions to things, I used a holographic framework and simply said to him, what color is the trap? Well, it's yellow with black bars. I'm in a prison. And when did you first feel that way? I felt that way in high school. That's exactly what I felt. So we began to look for what the potential was underneath that. So what you want is freedom. You don't want to be trapped. So what you want is a real relationship, a loving and real, and we began to focus on what the potential of the trap was. And it turned out to be a free, total, complete relationship. Then we pictured the holographic image of that relationship, which is part of his true potential. And he saw this wonderful essence of the relationship. We called it the being of their togetherness. Now, I know this about the beings of togetherness, that every relationship is a living thing. The relationship itself is alive. Relationships have power. Relationships have the ability to help you make decisions, or they can destroy your life, or they have all this stuff about relationships. The movies, the books, everything are full of this. So we had the full potential of the relationship, the being, the bot, we call it the being of togetherness. Help them guide themselves through that. Now, to do that, we had to do one more dimension. We had to take each of them to their full potential selves. This is their hyperspatial reality. The hyperspatial dimension where everything, according to people like Roger Penrose and some other great minds, these entities, these information systems, are the cause of our bodies. They are projecting holographically their information down and manifesting through us, so every one of us has this full potential self. Because, according to physics, every set of circumstances is driven by potential. every set of circumstances is driven by potential. You and I are a set of circumstances. We're all driven by potential. So therefore, the potential that's driving us, I call your full potential self. Anyway, if you want to have a great experience, go to your place of peace, call up your full potential self, and discover what kind of relationship you have with the essence of the being that's the real you. It's called the core basic essence of reality for you. That's what's real. And if you want to deal with things, that should be your reference. Just like they use frameworks for references, like the holographic framework. Well, when you use the full potential self of yourself as your reference, you walk that path, you take that course, you do the things your full potential suggests you do, and you develop this amazingly intimate relationship. And guess what? Your full potential self knows everything you need to know, has all the power you need. And life here is about unfolding that potential. So we took Anne and Frank and we had them go to their place of peace and discover their full potential selves, and then join together to find this being of togetherness. And then in that framework, we asked the baby also to come at her full potential self. Wow. The environment changed so rapidly that Frank said, oh my gosh, how could I ever refuse such a thing? Look at her, she's beautiful. He could actually sense the core essence of the being who is going to be born to both of them. Anne jumped up from her chair, ran over and just jumped onto his lap and hugged him and kissed him and said, I love you, I love you, I love you. And he just kissed her back and said, I love you too. And it was an absolutely beautiful experience as this essence of this hidden relationship became alive and manifest here. I got a note from him. It was about 9 months later, or 8.5 or something. Thank you. There's no time like the present because you're going to need it. Even if you've gotten along without it, and even if you had all kinds of walls between, even if you were taught it was not the thing to do, in physics and in the latest version of reality that we can find, everybody has a one-to-one relationship with their full potential self. You worried about God and all that kind of stuff? Let your full potential self take care of that. In the meantime, let's go to work. Because faith without action is dead. It says that in Corinthians. So now, how about your relationship with the things inside of you that are the information systems? We call them holodynes. We want to talk about holodynes for some time, but it takes a while to do that. But you need to know about these self-organizing information systems that are controlling your thinking and feeling, because they are causing the problems in the world. They're not mature. They need to be transformed. And our first primary job is to transform our holodynes. Holodynes are information systems that control us. They're our cruise control system. They're like the programs in a computer. And we have the power to go and transform those. And once you get your holodynes transformed and you get a great relationship with them, your internal world of government becomes coherent and effective. And guess what happens to the external governments? You can't have an external government with control and effectiveness until you have an internal government with control and effectiveness. How about your relationship to government then? Would you like to transform that? Because it starts at the micro and then progresses through to the macro. And you can't expect the government to change just because you're out there in the bleachers just criticizing them all the time and throwing stones. It's not going to work. But what does work is when you become effective internally and then become effective in the relationships around you. And when you get effective in the relationships like Anne and Frank, then all kinds of good things can be birthed, including an effective community and an effective country and an effective globe, family of nations. And that's absolutely necessary now because we're facing a problem that can only be solved by the global community. It can't be solved in a local one until we get the vision of the whole thing and know why we're doing it.